Hi, and welcome to the Higher Education Access Corner. I'm your host, Tiffanie DeVan, and joining me today is Abby Gabner. She's a program analyst here at PHEAA, and she's been with PHEAA for about 2 years. And she is what I would call your subject matter expert on many of the special programs that we administer here at PHEAA. Today, we're going to be discussing a topic that's near and dear to Abby's heart, foster care, and how to support Pennsylvania learners, students, on their journey from foster care to college. So Abby, thank you for joining me today here at the Higher Education Access Corner.
Hi, Tiffany. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here and talk about this subject. It is really near and dear to me, and I'll let you start.
All right, sounds good. So just to get started, like you said, it's near and dear to you. You're very passionate about the topic and helping the students. So tell us, where does the passion come from?
Well, first, I've always been passionate about education in general. And so I think that any student who wants to go to college should have a path to get there. And so before I worked at PHEAA, I worked at Millersville University in student affairs and enrollment management. And when I started there, my children were actually in college. So I had experienced how difficult it is, like just the higher ed admissions process and how much effort goes into that. And I know you're well aware of that. And so I had an understanding of everything that it takes and all the stuff that I had to do as a parent to help my kids get, all the funding that they needed and get all the paperwork that they needed, and how difficult that can be for some students, especially students from marginalized populations. And then, learning enrollment management was, just took it to a whole nother level, because that was new to me when I started at Millersville. And then working in student affairs, I ended up a young man came to me for help, and he was part of the foster care system, and he had tried to go to college in a different state. He went to a community college, he enrolled, and I guess he had signed some paperwork to take out loans, but he didn't even remember doing it. And so he ended up in federal loan default. So that's kind of where my passion came from, was just helping him navigate getting out of federal loan default, which at that time was really, really challenging. It was lots of phone calls with collection agencies and lots of back and forth. And I don't know if he could have done it without having an advocate and support, and somebody just being willing to keep pushing the buttons and being the squeaky wheel. So that's where it started. And then I ended up, because of him, I ended up working with more and more students in that same arena, and not just foster care to college, but any vulnerable population or marginalized population of student. And I decided to go back to school for my master's degree in social work while I was at Millersville. And then this population became like my population of interest, and I did a lot of research on them and all the barriers that they have to face.
Okay. So like you kind of mentioned, sometimes these students, they have so many barriers. They're just dealing with life. And, I always say, life is lifing. So it really, things are thrown at them. So maybe some of the things that students who already have a support system are able to easily navigate. Sometimes this population of students, not necessarily the case. So whether they're experiencing tough times, they don't have the right resources, the right support, for that student who actually wants to go or is considering going to school, and they don't know where to start, what advice would you have for them?
I would say to be the squeaky wheel, to self-advocate and try to find somebody to help. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Every university out there has a financial aid office. There's always people there that are willing to help. So find those people. And one of our programs that I think we're going to probably talk about, Foster Ed, which is a state-run Pennsylvania program, requires schools to have a point of contact for this population of students. So find out who that person is and go talk to them. Try to get there in person if you can. I always recommend for students to go into financial aid offices, take their advocate along, because sometimes they have questions the student might not think of because they just don't have as much life experience. So just don't give up, keep going. I guess would be my best
And
advice.
I would probably also add on though, for the student who's not yet even made it to the college campus, like in high school, seek out your counselors and look for additional resources or maybe a trusted teacher, because maybe the goal is to get to the post-secondary school, but you don't even know what schools to look at. You don't know what's a good fit. You may not know how to get all of the testing and things like that that are required. So I would also probably add on, try to be in touch with a college or career counseling, the school counselor, because there are folks like us, and be remiss not to mention, Access Partners are in high school. So, we come to the schools, we can give them information. We talk about the financial aid nights, and they don't always show up, but there's recordings. There's a way that they can reach out to us so that they can get the tools and resources and support they needed just to even be aware of the programs that are out there. Like you said, like you mentioned, foster care being one of them, and knowing that there is a point of contact for someone. So I would also add on that for those students. And sometimes they're overwhelmed and they're afraid. And one of my favorite things to say is, even if you're afraid, do it anyway. Do it afraid, and it's okay to do it that way, with everything. So why don't we talk
I
about?
agree 100%. Can I just add into that a little bit? Like, I agree 100% with what you're saying. And I love to use this platform as a call to action for those people that are educators working in those arenas to be advocates and champions for students. It's so rewarding. I like, just do it. Just be there for those students. And even as early as, I'm also a big advocate of early college readiness and earlier college readiness, because I think there's a lot of research around 7th and 8th grade, and students at that age really kind of, they don't realize they're making decisions, but they're making decisions. And you just never know when you're planting a seed that's going to grow into something. So just be mindful of students that might need extra support. And I know that there are so many good school counselors out there, because a lot of them reach out to me via the Chafee email box and ask me how to help. How can I help this student? I'm not well versed in this program. So yeah, I mean, I'd like to use this platform as a call to action for advocacy.
That's good. And I would say this platform, and then continue it on, and not just the platform, but our websites and the resources that we have available as well. I'll mention our resources again at the end, but our main website is PHEAA.org, PHEAA.org, for all of those who are listening. And then Abby, as we go through, she's going to share some additional resources that are out there. But I think now's a great time for us to talk about some of those financial aid programs that are available to our Pennsylvania students or learners who are experiencing foster care or have been in the foster care system. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the programs, maybe starting with Chafee or foster ed, whichever you prefer.
Okay, so Chafee is an education and training grant program, and it's federally funded. It's a maximum of $5,000 a year that students can apply for if they have foster care experience and they meet some other eligibility requiremets. And everything about Chafee is on our website. The email is really easy. It's just PAETG@PHEAA.org. So if you have any questions about Chafee, you can reach out and we will get back to you. So Chafee is federal, and it has its eligibility requirements. And the education training grant is just one piece of Chafee. There's actually more that goes along with it. PHEAA, that's what we worry about, is the grant for higher education, but it's there as to help students that are in foster care transition to adulthood in general. So there's more information with the Pennsylvania Department of Human Services around Chafee. So then later on, I think it was 2019 when foster ed was enacted. That's a state program. And that was enacted to try to pick up any of the difference between what Chafee doesn't cover for tuition and fees for foster care youth that want to go to higher education. So foster ed is state run. It follows the same eligibility requirements as Chafee, and there's one application, which makes it really easy for students. So they can apply and they're automatically applying for both programs. They do have different deadlines, which is a little confusing. It's one application, two deadlines. We need to get the Chafee deadline is a little different because there's actually funding that goes out. So we need to get that in by March 31st every year. And then foster ed, they have a little extra time. They have till May 1st to get that in for foster ed.
And I think it's also good to mention whether for those students, the Chafee and the foster ed programs are really great for those students who are struggling financially, or you just may not have all the resources. Because we talk about all the time, the cost of school's really expensive, and without the support of someone else to really be able to assist, maybe your parents aren't around, you're in a different scenario or a different situation. The good thing is that we're encouraging all students, regardless of their situation, to complete the FAFSA application or free application for federal student aid, which we talk about quite often here on the podcast, but that's always a must. And they're going to do that every year. And that's also going to be a requirement before they can actually come, not before, but an actual requirement in order for them to be eligible for the Chafee anyway. So they want to make sure that they're not only applying for the FAFSA, the free application, they're only completing the FAFSA, they complete the PHEAA state grant. They also are looking for as many scholarships as they can, because that, in conjunction with whatever aid they can get through any of these special state administered programs, really just helps to strengthen and possibly give them more funding that they'll need in order to hopefully get through a year and then get through their entire program of study. Because every year they are going to be reevaluated just to make sure that they can still qualify. So I did want to put that part out as well. And then the
FAFSA is required for Chafee, for eligibility for Chafee every year. They don't have to apply for Chafee every year though. So if they have applied and they've received an award, they will automatically renew. Now, if they didn't receive an award for some reason or another, then they'll have to reapply. But if there's any questions, they can always reach out. And if they're not sure, if they're pretty sure they're eligible, but they're not sure, I always just say, fill it out. When in doubt, fill it out and let us decide if you're eligible. Students should really apply for everything they think they're eligible for. So I always encourage them to go out to the special programs page on our website and look at everything. And maybe they're not going to a traditional 4-year college. Maybe they're eligible for PA TIP. They should apply.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of programs. There's also a lot of scholarships, which is why I think having that advocate in the financial aid office is so important, because they can help students apply for every dollar they can get.
Yeah, and continue to keep looking up until the time they graduate. It's not uncommon, I know, when talking to students, especially in high school, they apply that very first year that they're going into a post-secondary school, but then they stop. And scholarships are an ongoing thing, just like the FAFSA is an ongoing thing. You're going to apply and look every single year because there's always an opportunity to gain more funding that is out there. So I think it's good that you did highlight Chafee and you highlighted foster ed. For students who are actually completing the application, we know they have to apply. What are some of the most common mistakes that you'll see for students when they're completing the forms?
Well, the number one common mistake is not signing the form correctly. So it's usually bad signature. Unfortunately, they have to either print it out and hand sign it, or they have to use the electronic signature instructions that we have out on the website. They cannot just type in their signature, or we have to reject the application. And then they get a letter saying that, their application is incomplete. So they'll have another chance to complete it. but it slows everything down. So that's probably the number one reason. But then there's, sometimes they miss the deadline, sometimes they don't put in, they're not, and sometimes they're genuinely not sure what county would have their foster care records. If you think it's, one or two or even three, just write them all in, because it really does help the Department of Human Services find their records and get things validated a lot more quickly. And then sometimes just silly errors, like they'll put in the date that they signed the app instead of their birth date. And the birth date is also really important for us to be able to find the records. So just be careful, read the boxes. If you need help with the signature, just go to the financial aid office and have them help you work through it or scan it in for you.
And so, and that was going to be one of the questions, like who can assist if they need help getting through the process. But let's say it's their first year, they're not yet fully acclimated with all of their resources. Do we list anything like that on our website? And I don't know, that tells them, hey, if you're having trouble, call this number or reach out to your financial aid office or anything like that?
Well, they can always call us and we can talk them through things. But their high school counseling office should be able to help them with any of these issues. So hopefully they have a good relationship there. And I'm glad you brought up the website, because we actually just kicked off a new website that's for the Foster Care to College initiative. And that is full of resources to help students. There are, for foster care youth specifically, there are education liaisons in every county. So there's also another resource there, and they can find that information on our website, as well as a lot of other resources that aren't just related to even to higher ed, just in general, homelessness resources, independent living resources, and other things like that.
So you mentioned foster care to college. You want to explain that? Like, I'm familiar with that term and what it is, but for our listeners, they may not be aware that that's an actual thing. Can you give us a little bit more information on foster care to college?
It's been an initiative that's been going on for a while in Pennsylvania, as well as other states in the country. There's a lot of people that are rallying around this population and realizing that they need extra help, because it's tough. Navigating higher education, navigating the transition from adolescence to adulthood is tough for every student. So, to add that to all the other things that this population could be dealing with, it's just a lot. So, I mean, there's a lot of advocates out there. There's a whole foster care to college network of higher education professionals and independent living coordinators and child welfare workers that get together quarterly. The University of Pennsylvania puts that out. So, and that's also linked on our new initiative page. So I'm really excited about this page. I've wanted it since I've started at PHEAA, because it brings everything together. We had all these resources that they were kind of spread out, and this just unifies it and brings everything together for both students and advocates and parents and whoever else would want to visit it.
Good to know. So I actually haven't checked out the page yet, so I'm going to go check that out pretty soon. But I do appreciate you sharing that with our listeners. And so whether it's someone who is involved directly or indirectly with someone who's in foster care, please refer them to the site as well, because there will be tips and resources. And again, if you're that student or that person, that young learner who's been in and out of foster care system, sometimes it's hard to hold on to resources. Or if someone gives you a card or something like that, you may not, you may get lost in the shuffle. But if they have a website that's going to kind of direct them to a variety of different resources, I think it's easier to navigate. So if they remember PHEAA.org, they'll be able to navigate through and get additional details and get additional information that are in there. Are there any other tips to encourage the population of students, I would say, to once after they've gotten into these programs, to stay the course? Because it's so easy to get discouraged if things aren't going well. Maybe you get into school, things aren't going right. It's easy to get discouraged and kind of like fall off and not come back as a returning student. And the goal is once you get them in the school, hopefully they stay the course and then they finish their program of study. So any tips to encourage the student to stay the course when things get tough?
Yeah, and you already mentioned it earlier, like keep on it with the financial aid stuff every single year, because I think the financial part is the biggest barrier of all. And we know, and another reason why I'm passionate about this population is because I think we can do better. Their statistics aren't great. When they're interviewed, 17 and up age group, in this population, 70 to 80% say they want to go to college, and only 2 to 10% graduate from a four-year institution. So that's not good. And I think we can do better. And I think one of the ways is keeping them in college once we get them there, and they using their resources, like use all your resources. Don't wait, ask for help. Don't wait until, you're not going to make satisfactory academic progress. Go talk to your advisor, go talk to your point of contact for foster ed. It's not always easy to get people to help, but I think if you're a squeaky wheel and you keep at it, you'll find somebody that's going to help. A lot of schools have access offices that are there. I've worked in one of those, and so I know how helpful that can be. So seek that out.
And I think that sums it up really well. And it kind of goes back to your comment that you made in the beginning, advocate for yourself, because that's all a part of the self-advocacy that is there. It's not always easy to do, but it's definitely worth it to be able to, know that you're worth the effort to keep trying to connect with someone to get you the resources and the help that you need so they can stay the course. So any other tips that you can think of or anything else that you wanted to share about foster care or programs or anything that you think those who are involved with this population of students might benefit from knowing?
A lot of times schools have emergency funding on campus too, so find out about that. I can't say every school has that, but I know a lot of them do. So, because I used to man an emergency fund, and that's where I met a lot of students as well. And it was a really good experience for me and them, I hope. Yeah, I just think they just need to keep going. This is your future. This is what, get it done, what you want to accomplish. You can. You just have to keep going.
Thank you. And I also wanted to add, not only do I thank you for the information and the passion that you bring to it, you've also connected me with two students who will be appearing on the podcast in the future who have great experience in navigating and trying to navigate their way through the foster care system onto higher education. So for our listeners, stay tuned for that because it's going to be amazing. Abby, I thank you for everything that you shared. And again, I do want to share our website, PHEAA.org, PHEAA.org. So we want everyone to go in, get all the information that you need regarding not just Chafee and foster ed, but all of our programs and special state grant and special programs that we administer. Again, don't forget to complete the FAFSA. Don't forget about the resources that are available and that there is always someone there. And I think it's great to end, like you said, self-advocacy is a great thing for students to remember as well. So Abby, I thank you for joining me today here at the Higher Education Access Corner. It has been a pleasure, and I'm sure our listeners will get something out of this. For those of you who are tuning in, thank you for listening in, and we'll see you soon.